Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to make the Bali earrings designed by Carol Carmen Jewelry. And this lovely design, it features the ring part of the toggle clasp that was called the Bali clasp. And so that's where we got the name. It also has a really cool, just Eastern look. It's a very beautiful earring with really cool like desert and oceany colors. And so I hope you'll enjoy this design, and feel free to try it with different beads as well. It's a very cool concept that Carol came up with here in the way that she combined the two components. I thought that was just so neat. So it is a very well-known steps to complete. If you're familiar with brick stitch and brick stitch on a component, this will be super easy for you. But I'm going to go through it just in case for new folks to the stitch and show you how it was done on this component. Today I'm working with the size 8 seed beads that were part of the Ocean and Sky mix. And this is a mix you can find at DanielleWickesJewelry.com. And just click on shop and it will bring you to the spot where these are available. If they're sold out, let me know. I have restock requests, but at the moment I've got a good amount of them left. And again, the components I'm showing here, you'll need 4 of these. And these are also available in store. You'll need a jump ring, and you'll need a needle and some beading thread. To get started, we're going to work the top part first. So it's made in 2 pieces. So let's work the top first since it's the easier one. And you'll want about 45 inches of beading thread. I'm using a size B in gold. And so you'll want to thread a needle. I'm using a size 11 beading needle. And start by tying a double knot onto the component with the other end, the end that doesn't have the needle on it. And so I'm just going to bring that through. And I'm going to tie a double knot, and I'm going to try to get that double knot to sit right up here on the top part of the component. So start with one here. And I like to, when I'm doing my knots, go back with the loop one more time, go back through it once more, because that helps it stay a little bit tight and in the spot that I want it while I complete the second half of the knot. And this component is neat because it has these little beads in the inside. And I'm aiming for the one that's just below the outside bead, which is about the closest we can get our knot right here. And so there's the first half of my knot. And then here's the second half. And for that one, I just went ahead and did a single through the loop, double knot. And then I'm going to double check one thing here, make sure it didn't slide, because again, I'd like to keep it inside of the beads. And it looked like it did slide on me. So let me show you, if that happens to you, how to get that to go back over. I'm just bringing my needle through. And again, I'm kind of aiming to get it to sit right there with the knot on the top there. And just take a look on the back side and make sure it's also in the spot where you want it. And again, I'm going to tighten up that knot. And let's get started with brick stitch. So row 1 is going to be worked with turquoise, and that's actually true for both the top and the bottom. And the way I like to start my brick stitch is I'll pick up one bead and I'll slide that down, get that to sit right above the component there, and then I'll take the tail thread and put it through the bead. So just like that. And then when you pull the working and tail thread apart, it'll bring the knot up into your bead. And if it's a little on the side, it's because your knot's not quite on the top. So you can just adjust it like this. See how I'm kind of pulling it? Getting that knot to be right where I want it. And again, I'm pulling working and tail threads apart, nestling the knot into my bead. So there's the first step there. And then the next thing you want to do is grab the next size 8 seed bead. Again, I'm still going to work with that same color turquoise. And I'm going to use these little beads to help me. And if you're using another component that doesn't have these little beads, then just, bring the needle behind it. But I'm going to feel for where this little next break in the beads is, because I want my thread to sit over it. So I'm using my finger here at the back to kind of hold that. See? And then let's bring this through. And now here at the back, my finger is holding that thread in place. And then just pulling down. And then you want to come up through the bead. And come up through the bead in the direction that the thread's coming out so that it sits flat against your component. and help guide the thread, both on the front here and the back, making sure it stays around the beads if you're using the same ring that I am. And that's part of the look, actually, that is so neat about this design. So I'm going to keep going like this all the way around. Let's do a few more together and then we'll jump ahead. So here's this one. I'm going to pull that over just a bit. I can feel at the back that it's not quite where I want it. And then we'll come up through the bead here. There we go. See how I'm keeping it on the bead? It's not too hard to do. It just, you want to double check it did that on both sides. It's looking good there. And then as you get going, it gets easier and easier. Let's do one more. And again, this is all just going to be the same color, turquoise bead. Guiding the thread here from the back. And coming up through the front. And let's just take a look back here. So far, so good. So carry on like that. And go ahead and just, finish all of the beads until you reach right about here. All right, so I made it all the way around. And what you can see here is that for each one, I was really careful just to kind of make sure that all of my strands were in between a bead. It is not required that you do that. I just think it looks really cool. And that was part of the design that Carol and I were going for when it was the thing that I just thought was so neat. When I saw her first post showing this beautiful earring, was that she had taken advantage of those little beads and used them as little thread bars. So pretty cool. So I've got my row 1 done. And I wanted to say really quickly that it's not necessary to worry too much about these counts because the counts aren't an important part of the design. You're likely to get pretty close to the same counts as me, but it also isn't an imperative. You can go with whatever looks good to you and then just follow these row counts as far as like color and order of rows, but don't sweat the number of beads you get in each row is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't actually really matter. And so if the PDF that I created that shows each of these really just focuses on what color to do next and how to link them and how to put that little wire guardian on, and it doesn't necessarily focus on the counts of each row because we're not as worried about that with this one. Brick stitch is kind of like that. You always get a different count sometimes, and it's totally okay. So I started the brick stitch a little differently on this one. A lot of times you start row 2 with 2 beads. I started with 1 because I like the edges being tight down on the edge. And so I did just start with 1 bead. I'm sharing how I did it, but you're welcome to start it the other way if you prefer. For me, I think this is the best and easiest way. 1 bead, first thread bridge right here. And thread bridge is that little thread jumping from 1 bead to the next right there. You just go under it with your needle and then you just pull tight. And there you go. And then just come back up through the bead. And the bead just sits right there like that. So that's what I was going for, and that's why I like the 1 bead approach. I'm going to go around, picking up a bead, going under the next thread bridge. And I wanted to say that, for the most part, it was 1 for 1 for me, except for just a few places where it started to feel like I needed to add a different count, meaning more than 1 bead fitting into the same thread bridge. And you'll know that because you'll start to get beads leaning a little bit, like this one's just starting to do it. I still think the next thread bridge is the right choice for this bead, but there will be a point here as we go around. Let's do this one together, where you'll notice there's just too much of a jump. And we will want to double up beads into the same thread bridge. And I think it's going to be right about here. See, it's really, really leaping out there. So on this one, I'm going to needle under the same thread bridge that I just used for the former bead. And put on a new bead there. And I do think that looks nice and good. You don't want to do too close or it'll pucker, but that seems like a really good. It's a really good spacing. So yeah, and then here's just a regular next thread bridge. We'll just keep going. Oops. And so on. So I'm going to carry on to the end of this row. All right, and here I am at the last bead. And right before I tighten that one down, bringing it to right about there, I'm going to bring the tail up through it. And this is the tail thread from when we started. And let's carry on tightening that. And now we have tail thread and working thread right there. Let's start the next row. Next row is going to be this frosted topaz. And again, I'm going to turn my work and just kind of hold the tail out of the way. Bring on a bead under the first thread bridge, right there, and then go up through the bead again, and it should sit right there like that. Pick up the next one, next thread bridge, and so on. And again, with this one, you may find that on a few of the spots where as you're going around, you're going to probably want to put 2 beads under the same thread bridge to keep it going in a good circle where it doesn't have you'll notice the bead will just really lean. So just 2 under or 1 under as needed, and get around to the other side. And I wanted to show one other thing really quick here. So what I did on the original was I actually finished the whole row. I went all the way over here. And then I just did some weaving back to add my wire guardian. And that was actually just because I forgot to put it on. So I wanted to say that you could also add it now while you're getting to this spot. So there's 2 ways you could do this. Really, you could finish this entire row, go back and just add that by just going up and down through the beads. Or if you want to just get it out of the way here, you can do that too. So let me show that really quick, because this is going to be the top of the earring. So here is probably the left-hand side of the 2 center beads. So there's this one right here, and here's the next one. Coming up through those. All right. And let's see, actually, I think one more. And this might be one that shares a thread bridge. Let's just take a quick look at that gap. I think so. Let's put that on the same one. And then we'll come up through this bead. Okay, so that's roughly the center there. Let me show you with the needle. It's a little easier to see. So I've got, it works out a little differently every time I do it. On this one, I noticed that it really made sense to get that just through those 2 center beads right there. On this one, we're going to end up with something that's kind of in between. So let's just take a quick look. Yeah, so that looks like it's my center beads. So I'm going to try to put them in between these 2, the wire guardian. Let's get that going over here. There's lots of different ways you can do the wire guardians, but I like to just come up through one side. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just take my hands and just expand it out a little bit. See how I made it a little bit wider? You can do that to make it work for, in this case, I maybe even pinched it down a little bit so it was perfect to straddle 2 beads. And then on this one, I'm going to make it so it goes over 3. And it's wide enough or it can be made thin enough to work either way. Yeah, just a little bit more here. There we go. That should do it. Okay, so I'm going to come around the other side and go through there's a little opening there. Pinch everything right like that so that the thread stays in the well on the top. And just pull that down. Okay, and I'm going to go through the 3rd bead here. And again, that's just to keep it centered. For you, that could be 2 beads, and that's okay too. It kind of wants to flip. Sorry about that. Okay. So let's just take a look and make sure I'm still happy with how that's positioned. It's going to look right about like that. I think that's good. All right. I could also, let me try one thing really quick. I'm going to come back up out of this bead and see if it looks good this way. Got through 2 beads there. That's okay. Or it could be like that. Let's take a look. You know what? I think I prefer that. So it's kind of up to you. If you think it's not centered there, you can move it over just a tad bit. And then you can either use the thread bridges that are underneath this row to make turns back up through the same bead. That's one way you can get through it. Or alternatively, you can go down a bead or even just zip over one bead, especially if you've got just 2 like I do right here. You can go like that. So it's all going to work either way. This is going to match closer what I did here, so I'm going to go with that, even though it is a tad bit off center. I'm not sure if you guys are seeing that too, but I feel like it's okay. I'm going to go with it. Okay, and so I'm going to reinforce that 2 times. There's 1. And I've ended up just kind of going down through 2 beads. That's accidental, and it actually doesn't matter. You can go just down through these 2 if you want. It's okay to do either of those. And just kind of what my needle wanted to do. All right, so there we are. So I'm going to come up through here, and I'm going to try not to go through the wire guardian this time. So see how I've avoided it there? And let's just carry on with the brick stitch. So that's how you can add it in flow with what you're doing. And let's get the next bead on. Okay, and so I just need to keep going until I get to here. All right, so when you get to that last bead, go ahead and weave in from here and then trim your thread. I'm going to show weaving in on this one, and then you'll know how to do it on all of the finishes that we've got. So on this one, I'm just going to go down through the next bead here, just giving it symmetry to what I did at the start. It also helps the little edge beads sit flat. My thread is going to show, and if you don't like that, you can always go back through the bead over here and hide it. But that's a design choice I made for this particular one. And then I'm going to put my needle in between 2 beads here in that first row, and my goal is to capture my thread bridge. Coming up. And see, I got it. Captured that thread bridge. And now I can come right up through this bead here. And I'll carry on through a few more, do that a bunch more times and trim it. And so after you've done a bunch of weaving around, you can go ahead and trim. And on the starting side where you had the knot, if you want to, you can just trim that one since it's got a knot under here. Or if you want to weave it around and then trim it, that's okay too. I've been using a thread burner to trim mine. So just really close to it. I'm just going to go ahead and just remove that thread there. And there's the top half of the component. So to start the next side, which is a little more involved, you're going to need a lot more thread. I would go with 75, maybe 80 inches at least. It does use a lot of thread going around. It's a lot of rows. And then it starts exactly the way we just showed for this one. And then the next row is some hex beads. And I'm going to stop the camera there and show the spacing on the hex beads is a little different than the rest of the design because they sit closer to each other than the round 8/0s do. So go ahead and just repeat what we did here, and then we'll start the row 2 here. Okay, so there's step 1 done for the bottom half. And it was the same as the other one. I just tried to make sure that all of the threads stayed in the little spaces there. And, you know, I even used the same color, but now we're going to change it up. Now we're going to work with the rose-colored hex beads. And so it's kind of the same process. There's no real difference in the steps other than the fact that these beads are a little bit less wide than a round 8/0 seed beads. So what happens is that they don't take up as much space. So I'll start with the first thread bridge, just like normal. Bringing that through. And this is extra long thread, so these pulls are going to be taking a little longer because we have a lot of rows to do. So there's that one. And again, I'm doing the thread show method. If you want to do a different one, you just start with 2. But I like this because it keeps the edges flat. And you don't really see the thread against this color especially. But so there's my first bead, and here's my second one. And you notice I've got space. like a lot of space there. And so I'm actually going to put 2 in the first thread bridge right here. You won't need to do this every time, but on quite a few of them, you will. It's a lot more than, so for example, when we were doing these other ones, we were spacing, you know, it was pretty much 1 for 1, except for like every 5 or so, remember? And it kind of varies, but roughly every 5 or so, we were putting 2 in a single thread bridge. This one, it's going to be like more the norm than the difference, right? So I'm going to pick up another one. It ends up using a lot more beads in the rows where you have the hex beads. And if you're already thinking ahead to the row after this where we switch back to rounds, it does mean that you're occasionally skipping thread bridges when we do the next row. So I'll show that to you. But let's just keep going with this one. So we're starting to get a lean. See, it's leaning a little bit. Let's come up through here. Okay, so when I see that, I know I want to double again. So I'll grab another bead and put it under the same thread bridge as the former. Okay, and you see how that kind of flattens it out? So just do that around and just know that you're going to need to use 2 beads under 1 thread bridge probably quite a few times. Let's just go to the other side now. So here's my last bead. And I doubled on here and I've got this last one ready to go. I'm going to bring my tail thread up through this bead before I finish the tightening down. And now this is the one that just went under the thread bridge, and I'm just coming back up through the bead with this one. And there you go. I've got these to pull apart, just like that. And flipping it to work back in the other direction. And after I get another row on, I'll probably come back and just trim that. It's with all of the rows we got to do, it does start to kind of get in the way. But I just wanted to not have it trimmed so close to the knot that was under here, the tail thread. So I'll trim it after I get it up into like row 3. Okay, so for the next one, we're going to start with a pink. Above the pink, we're going to start with the limestone color. So there's the limestone one. I just put 1 bead, first thread bridge, coming up through the bead. Pull tight. So there's that one. And you'll pretty much at least get 1 for 1. And on some occasions, you may find that you want to skip a thread bridge because of how many beads we got around here versus, see how much wider those are? So you get a little bit of a tiny, tiny difference. So you'll have to feel it out, but it definitely will work. You just got to look at where do I have space next? So I still have space in the next thread bridge here. I'm going to go to the next one. It's only covering it up a little bit. And how's this one looking? Still good. So far it's just been 1 for 1. But going from memory on the first one, there's at least a few places, once or twice, where I actually skipped, but let's just go around this whole one together. Why not? I like to make sure my bead is free moving so I don't have it punctured any thread. So you'll see me kind of do that as I go. There we go. It's all looking pretty good here. Oh, my bead must have fallen off my needle. There it is. So far, I actually think it's been 1 for 1. I don't think I've skipped any. So on this one, for whatever reason, it's working out like that. I may have been a little tighter when I made the first one. This is why I didn't put counts in the pattern. You'll notice in the PDF, it just says with color and not, because the counts there are honestly different every time I do it. but you don't notice that in the finished earring. It looks really beautiful without having to worry about it. So I decided it wasn't a key element for the design. I just want to make sure that you match those color rows, and that's what people are going to see when they're looking at the earrings. Okay, yeah, this is pretty much going 1 for 1. So I'm going to finish it over to here, 1 for 1. In my case, that's what worked out for this one. And then what we are going to do real quick off camera. So finishing this one, I'm going to create 2 more rows. One is a hex row, so it's going to have a lot of, doubling, and then one more of the frosted topaz, and then join me back to show picot stitch and weaving in. And I stopped to record I want to show one more time just what I meant by double in. This is a really great example. See how that one's really leaning? So I'll grab another one and go under that same thread bridge, right? Pull it through. Come up through that second bead there. See, it really does help with flattening out that stitch. And so I'm going to carry on like that until I get to the side, and then I'm going to add that next row of topaz and we'll do the end. There it is. That row's done. Okay, so just one more row to go. You just want to grab the topaz color and begin that final row of brick stitch using this one. And just carry on. All right, I've got 1 bead to go. Just going to bring that one under the last thread bridge here. And here we go. Okay. So there's the bottom part of the earring done. Everything except for the little picot edge, which we're going to add right now. So sorting through my mix, I'm just going to find the dark turquoise, which is like a little, let me show you next to each other. There's 2 colors in the mix. One is a little bit lighter than the other one. And we used the lighter one in rows 1 on both of the components. So we're using the darker one for this part. 1 bronze, and then 1 more of those. So just like that. And then here on the piece, really super, super easy. You just want to go down through the next bead. So we're exiting out of that one. And we're just going to go down to this next one here. And what'll happen when you do that is it'll kind of sit like, it'll look a little bit wonky until you help it. So there we go. Just go in for getting it just like that. And then come up through the third one. And let's do the same thing again, picking up those same 3 beads in that same order. And now we're headed down to the 4th bead. And that one just popped in place, so pretty cool. And if it doesn't do that, we just help it a little bit. The goal being to get this one to sit on the top like a little flower. It always looks like a little cactus to me. I love a little picot stitch. It's a great way to finish things. Next one. So what is that, our 6th bead there? Going down through. Here's one I had to help a little bit. You just want to get it to look like that. And then come up through the next bead. All right, so I reached the end, and I wanted to share one last little thing really quick. On my first one that I made, I ended up with really good spacing to do picot for every single one. See how that worked out? And so I didn't even think anything of it. And then on this one, my counts for whatever reason were just a hair different, and I've got a spare bead here with nowhere to put a picot. So I think what will look good in this case is just to add 1 more of these beads. And I'm going to go under the thread bridge, this last one right here, and then come up through the bead. And I'm just going to let that be the edge there. If I wanted to, I could put 1 more bead on, maybe try to do something like that. And that could also be a good way to finish it. Just adding 1 last little one to the edge. So you could do that, or you could just leave the edge one hanging. And I can't really decide which one I like. Maybe I'll stick with this one though, because it's got a somewhat of a symmetry going. And so I'm going to go under the thread bridge that's under this last one. And I'm going to come up through this bead here. And let's see. Yeah, I think that works. So there's one way you can save the edges. No one's going to notice that when you're wearing it. That might happen to you, so I wanted to share that. But for the most part, it probably is going to work out like that for you, unless somewhere along the line here I must have just had a slightly different count. But there they are. There they are. So this is one where you just definitely want to let yourself be free to go with the flow of the stitch and not necessarily with the flow of the counts. So that's definitely really a good way to look at it. And this one is going to be so fun. So the last thing you're going to want to do is take a jump ring and just connect these two together and then pop an ear wire on the top. I haven't done that yet, but when I do that, I'll be completely finished. I'll do a glamour shot and then I will wear them. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you're loving the Ocean and Sky mix. Please check back on July 20th if you're watching this right away this week. This Saturday, for me, I'm recording today on what I think is the 15th. No, actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm recording here on Sunday the 14th. But I'm hoping to have the Surfer Girl fringe earrings video done by the 20th, and that one will be live on this YouTube channel. You can find it there. If you're watching this as a replay later, it's probably already there, so you can go check for it. And again, it's featuring Ocean and Sky Mix from Danielle Wickes Jewelry, designed with my friend Carol from Carol Carmen Jewelry. And this is her earring design, and you can find her at Carol Carmen Jewelry. Thanks for watching. Bye.